Hi guys and welcome back to JavaScript Playground. In today's video, we will talk about mouse events. The mouse events are triggered when the different mouse keys are pressed and or released. These are the mouse events available. We've got mouse down, mouse up, click, double click, mouse over, mouse enter, and mouse move. There are other mouse events as well, but these are the ones we are going to cover in the video. If you want to see the entire list, I'll add the reference list URL in the description below. Check it out. Mouse down event is triggered when either the left or right or middle mouse key is pressed on an HTML element. Mouse up event is triggered when either the left or right or middle mouse key is released after the mouse down event. Click event is triggered when the left mouse button is pressed and released on the same HTML element. It requires the mouse down and mouse up event to happen before click event. So the normal trigger order is first on mouse down, then on mouse up, and then on click is triggered. Double click event is triggered when the left mouse button is clicked twice. Mouse over event is triggered when the mouse pointer enters the HTML element and its child elements. Mouse enter event is triggered when the mouse pointer enters the HTML element. Mouse move event is triggered every time the mouse pointer is moved over the HTML element. So let's give these a try. Starting with the first one, mouse down. Let's say when I hold down my right key here, it should trigger mouse down event. So let's give it a try. So coming here, so this button has an ID, top button. Let's select this. So let's say btn document.get element by id, and let's use the id here. So btn.add event listener. So the name of the event is mouse down, so we can simply use that. It requires an anonymous function, so let's create one. Let's print in the console mouse down event. Let's save it. Coming back here, let's open the console. Alright, so right click and hold. So it printed in the console mouse down event. Similarly, left click hold mouse down event. Similarly, the center button hold and it prints mouse down event. Let's try the mouse up event. So let's just copy this and paste it here. Instead of mouse down, let's make it mouse up, and let's change this text as well. So coming here, now when I hold down, it says mouse down, and when I release it, it says mouse up. Similarly, right click down, it prints mouse down event, and when I release the right key, it shows mouse up event. Similarly, let's try click as well. So coming here, so instead of mouse up, let's say click. Let's save it and coming here. And as you can see, first mouse down event is triggered, then mouse up event is triggered, and then the click event is triggered. Similarly, let's try double click as well. So let's copy this. And for double click, it's dbl and click. Let's update the log. Let's check it out. And when I double click, it shows us double click. But before that, there's one single click event and there's another single click event. And after that, we have double click. So even when you do double click, the two clicks do trigger the click event. And of course, the mouse down and mouse up events as well. There are many use cases where you would want to use the click event. Say, for example, to send data to backend, so on submit button click, or say you want to show up login pop-up. So on login button, it shows you a pop-up. So you can handle that using the click event. Say, for example, now you want to close that pop-up. So you can click on the close icon and that can hide the pop-up for you. So there are many use cases, and you will come across so many times where you will have to use this click event. So moving on. So we have this mouse over event, and this is triggered when the mouse pointer enters the div element and its child elements. Let's give it a try. So coming down here. So let's do this. So every time this event is triggered, let's increase the count by 1. So coming here. So the ID is over. Let's select this element. So var, say over document.get element by ID. Now we have access to this element, so we can add the event listener. So add event listener. The name of the event is mouse over. Let's pass an anonymous function here. First, let's print in the console mouse over event. Let's check it. So when we hover here, so when the mouse comes over this HTML element and its children, it prints in the console mouse over event. Now what we need to do is we need to select this paragraph tag. So coming here, so let's select this element. Let's create a variable, say count, and document dot query selector. We can select it using normal CSS. So hash over, so this division ID, so hash over space paragraph or greater than sign paragraph, so that we select the immediate child. Now we have access to this count element. To update a value, we can simply do count element dot inner HTML, because inside this HTML element there's only text. So we can simply update the inner HTML and that should do the trick. Say 10. Let's save it. And as you can see, when this event is triggered, it updates the value to 10. But what we want to do is we want to increase it by 1. So let's create a variable here, say over count. Let's give it a default value of 0. And let's update this. So over count plus equal to 1. So every time this event is triggered, just update the over count by 1. And let's use this variable here. Let's save it. So coming back. Now when I enter, it increases the value. When I enter its child, it increases the value. When I enter back to the main div, it increases the value. And when I enter another child, it increases the value. And when I again enter this parent div, it again increases the value. So as I mentioned earlier, so this mouse over event is triggered when the mouse pointer enters the HTML element or its child elements. So if we keep moving it around, this value keeps increasing. All right, so moving on. The next one is mouse enter. So mouse enter event is triggered when the mouse pointer enters the HTML element. So let's give this a try. So the ID for this element is enter. So again, let's do the same thing. When the element enters, just increase the value by 1. All right, so first let's select this element. So var, say enter, document.get element by ID. So the ID was enter. Now let's add this event. So enter.add event listener. So the name of the event is mouse enter. Let's give it an anonymous function. Let's print in the console, which says mouse enter event. So now when I enter this element, it prints in the console mouse enter event. So every time I enter, it updates the value. But once I enter and I keep moving inside, it doesn't print it over and over. So it only prints when we enter the element. All right, so let's try updating that count. So again, there's a paragraph inside this enter div. So let's select it. So var, say count element. So document, let's use the query selector. So hash enter and angle bracket paragraph. So we're selecting the first paragraph, which is a direct child of this enter div. So we get this paragraph. So coming here. Alright, so let's remove this print statement. And what we want to do is we want to update the inner HTML for this count element. And we also need a variable to store our current count. So let's say var enter count. So let's give it a default value of 0. And every time this event is triggered, let's update it by 1. So enter count plus equal to 1. And let's use that variable here. Let's save it and coming back. And now every time I enter this element, the count increases by 1. Alright, so moving on. So the next one is mouse move. Let's do the same thing here. So whenever this event is triggered, let's update the value by 1. So for this, we've got a div with an ID move. So let's select it. So var, let's say move element. So document dot get element by ID. Let's add an event listener. So move element dot add event listener. So the name of the event is mouse move. Let's pass an anonymous function here. Let's print it in the console. So mouse move event. Let's save it and come in here. And now every time I move inside this element, it prints in the console mouse move event. Alright, so let's try updating this count. Again, this count is wrapped in a paragraph, which is a direct child of this move div. So we can use query selector to select this element. So let's do that. Let's say var count element document dot query selector. So the ID is move and select the first paragraph, which is a direct child. So to update that count, we can simply do count element dot inner HTML. And we also need to store this current value in a variable. So let's do that. Let's say move count 0. And every time this event is triggered, let's update this variable by 1. So move count plus equals to 1. Let's use this variable here. Also, let's remove this print statement. And now, as you can see, whenever I move my mouse, it triggers the event. And that's a wrap for today.